person, because our behavior is not same across situations. Okay. But psychologists say, yes, Mr. Michel, you are right, but even if we behave differently in different situations, there are some similarities the way we behave. Personality determines our behavior. Okay, a person, suppose a person is very angry person, okay, or aggressive person. Maybe when he is in his home, he behaves in a different manner. When he is in classroom, he behaves in a different situation. The expression of anger may be different, but the underlying anger is there. We should study personality. Agree? Sumitra?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And personality determines the individuality of the individuality of the person. So each person is unique, each person is distinctive in terms of the way he thinks, feels and acts. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So what do we infer from that? Personality has three characteristics. Okay. First, thoughts, feelings, and actions are considered as behavioral components of identity that make distinction between or among individuals. Okay. So thoughts, feelings, and
Ma'am, can you repeat
actions.
this?
Pardon?
Ma'am,
What are you
can
saying?
you repeat this, please?
Yes, yes. Personality has three characteristics from this definition. Okay.
Okay,
First,
ma'am.
th- our thoughts, feelings, and actions distinguish among individuals. Okay. So the way
Okay,
we
ma'am.
think, feel, and act makes us unique. It makes us different from every other individuals. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Second characteristic. Second characteristic is behaviors are viewed as being primarily caused by internal rather than environmental factors. When we talk about personality, what do we assume? There is something internal. The way we think, feel, it is internal matter, no? So, something internal causes our behavior. So, behavior is primarily caused by internal factors. Okay? And third assumption is behavior of the person is organized. It is not, we do not behave in a haphazard manner. When we feel bad, our behavior is our feeling influences our behavior. Okay? So behavior is organized. In this context, we may we may refer the definition of Alport, Gordon Alport. You must have heard his name. Alport defined personality as the dynamic organization within the person of the psychophysical systems that determine the unique adjustments to one's environment. You must have heard this definition. You must have read. Okay. So, what do you
what do we understand from this definition? First, it is within the person. So our inner personality guides us or directs our individual's behavior. It is within the person that determine our adjustment to our environment. How do we adjust to our environment? To our behavior. So personality determines our behavior, our adjustment to our behavior. Personality is unique. The way we think, feel, and act, the combination makes us unique, different from every other individual. And it is within the person. Psychophysical systems. There are not only psychological systems are involved, there are also physical systems are involved. Okay. So, do you now understand what personality is? I think
Yes.
you are now
Yes.
clear. Okay. Hmm. So, how does personality develop? There are several factors which determine the development of the personality. Okay. There are several determinants of personality. We can categorize them as biological factors, psychological factors, and environmental factors. Okay. Biological factors, it is related to your biology, related to your physiology. So it emphasizes biological determinants, emphasize on your physics and body functioning. So what is physics? Your body build, your physical attractiveness, okay, your physical defects, and what is body functioning? Your homeostasis, your health conditions, okay. How does your body build determines your personality. Suppose a person is very short in stature, he is a dwarf, okay, then it is very likely that the person is feeling inferior to others because his height is so short, he is so different from others. He must be suffering from inferiority complex. So his personality is affected. Then physical attractiveness. We all like physically attractive people, isn't it? So physical attractive people, they get importance from others. So it is they must be very confident about their appearance. So their personality is influenced by their attractiveness. And coming to the
Ma'am, is it
physiology.
applicable?
Okay, yes, yes,
Ma'am, is it applicable anywhere and everywhere?
yeah, definitely. Some people overcome their physical defects. I don't disagree, and actually we will discuss it later. Our Adler talked about organ inferiority. We all try to be superior to others, so we try to compensate our physical defects through our behavior, by becoming superior, by excelling in some other areas. We try to compensate our physical defects. So it is at your unconscious level, it affects your personality. I think so. Now, do you agree with me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Then coming to our physiology, body physiology, first is our homeostasis. Do you know what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is the refers to the maintenance of a stable internal environment, body balance, through relatively having normal temperature, normal level of blood sugar, normal level of blood pressure, etc. When homeostasis is disturbed, we feel upset, we don't feel comfortable, and so our behavior changes. For example, when during summer, we sweat a lot. Okay, so there is water loss. When there is not enough, there is not proper water balance, we become irritable. During summer, when there is we sweat a lot, and it is very hot, most of us are irritable, we feel irritated, isn't it? And suppose we have not slept properly, the next day we also feel uncomfortable, our behavior is affected. So when there is disturbances in homeostasis, our behavior is affected. Suppose we have I have already told you about physical defects, but Alfred Adler talked about organ inferiority. Suppose a person is obese, so in our culture, obesity is considered to be a handicap in social relationships. So the obese persons, they try to avoid social situations. It is not always right, but he is likely to behave in that matter. Then comes health conditions. A person suffering from a permanent illness like diabetes, he experiences tension and anxiety, which causes frustration in dealing with the demands of social environment. So a frustrated person become aggressive and often turn their aggression towards others. So physical health also affects our personality. Okay, then comes psychological factors. Several psychological factors also determine the development of personality. For example, we can discuss intelligence. A person with very good intellectual ability, we know intelligence is defined as the ability to adjust to the demands of our environment. So if a person is more intelligent, his adjustment is better. Okay, so an intelligent person can solve the problems of his environment very easily. So he is creative, he is thoughtful, he is adventuresome. So intelligence, superior intelligence affects personality development favorably, but it is not always true. Very superior intelligence, whom we call as gifted, they face adjustment problems. Okay, you must be knowing it. Very often, gifted persons, they cannot adjust with with others. They have traits like negativism, intolerance. They can cheat others. They feel self-sufficiency, etc. So it also affects our personality unfavorably. Second psychological factor is emotional determinants. We know when we are emotionally not balanced, we may be suffering from anxiety. We may express it through our aggression. We may be suspicious. So we know we need emotional balance. Emotional deprivation also affects our personality. If we are not loved by anybody, it is very likely that we become negative to the society. We develop negativism. So emotional balance and emotional catharsis, emotional expressions are very important for the formation of personality. Then aspiration and achievements. We have also aspirations, and aspirations means what we want to achieve, and achievement is what we actually achieve. So if there is a big gap between our aspiration and achievement, then we feel frustrated, we feel depressed. But when our aspiration and achievement is realistic and match, then we feel satisfied, we feel confident, our self concept is enhanced. Okay, so aspirations and achievements also determine our personality formation. And lastly, there are some environmental factors. Environmental factors, the most important environmental factor is our family environment, family determinants. If our among the family determinants, our socialization process, our parent-child relationships, these are very important. Sometimes parents are strict, demanding, punitive. In that case, the children become dependent upon external controls to guide their behavior. But we know there are four types of parenting type: authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, etc. And authoritative parenting style is, it is said, research shows authoritative parenting style helps the personality development in a very favorable manner. So parenting style is very important. And again, coming to Alfred Adler, he says that our birth order means the ordinal position in our family also affects our personality. Adler observed that the firstborns have a typical type of personality. It is different from the middleborn or the lastborn children in the family. Usually, the firstborn children are very confident. They are very dominating. But the last born children, the youngest child of the family, he becomes very dependent, and he is pampered, so he becomes dependent, and he is not independent to face the outer society. Sometimes it happens. Okay, so birth order is also important. Size of the family is also important. Larger families, it is our common understanding that in larger families, children are more adjusting. Whereas in nuclear families where there is a single child and both the parents are working, in that case the child is not very good in his or her social adjustment. Then among the environmental factors comes the educational factors, the school factors. So his relationship with peers, his relationship with teachers, all these affect our personality. Educational institutions also in which the children are taught are also important determinants. Sometimes we say that the children studying in English medium schools are smarter than the children who are studying in Odia medium schools. So, medium of instruction or the medium of schooling in the schools also affects our personality. So, these are some of the factors which determine personality. So, in summary, what do we know? Personality development is a function of physical determinants, psychological determinants, as well as environmental determinants. Okay, just a minute.
Ma'am, the impact of peer,
Yes, yes.
ma'am, the impact of peers can,
Hmm? Complete your question.
ma'am, can the impact of peers affect the personality of the child?
Yes. Suppose our peer interaction is not good, we are not accepted by our peer group, then it is very likely that we become aggressive, we may become critical or cynical about our friends, cynical about our friends. We develop avoidant type of personality. Avoidant type of personality, it is a personality disorder when we fear to begin social interaction. We fear lest others should not accept me. They may not accept me. That's why I should not talk to them. So, due to the fear of being not accepted by friends, he doesn't mix with his friends. So, peer interaction also affects it. You must be feeling it. In your classroom situations. So suppose somebody is very aloof and he is not accepted by all other friends. You people do not accept him. You people do not share your secrets with him. What does happen? He remains aloof. He also remains aloof. He or she doesn't have confidence to tell you anything, to tell you for help. So personality is affected. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Can you understand what I am saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Then, so personality is important, and we are going to study personality. But there are some issues, some controversies regarding personality. Let us discuss them. Personality, whether person first is our nature nurture conflict. Whether personality is inherited, it is determined by genes, or it is determined by environment. What do you think? Whether personality is determined by genes, or it is
Ma'am, I think
determined by,
both the factors are affected.
yes. Some scientists,
Ma'am, I think both the factors are involved in the developing personality.
yes, both the factors are involved. The scientists who view or who believe that genetic predispositions are the main determinants of people's behavior, they are called nature theorists of human behavior. Okay, but other scientists, they believe that the way we behave is or the way we behave has been taught to us. We have been taught to behave in that manner. That's why we behave in that way. It is not also wrong. Many behaviors we have been taught. So, the latter group of scientists are called nurture theorists. So, there is a conflict between the role of heredity and environment. Environments, the scientists who emphasize the role of environment are mainly behaviorists. You know, John Watson, a proponent of environmental learning. John Watson told that he can make a child to anything he wants. A beggar, a doctor, a teacher, a minister, whatever he likes. Okay? Irrespective of his genetic endowment, genetic potentialities. So he is an extreme behaviorist. And Skinner also thinks that our behavior is totally determined by our environment.
Ma'am, but many a times the child imitates behavior, like copies the behavior of the other person. We cannot always say that behavior is always learned or something like that. The child always
Yes,
tries to imitate behavior from the very beginning.
yes, imitational behaviors are also learned. That is called modeling or imitational learning. We will discuss about social cognitive theories of personality, Albert Bandura's theory. We will discuss about it. Who is telling that we imitate others' behaviors, and he is a behaviorist, but he is a social cognitive theorist. We will discuss in detail about in coming days. Okay. Child also, you are right, child also imitates other behaviors. It is also learning. observational learning. It is called observational learning. So we learn, psychologists say that we learn by three methods. First, classical conditioning. Second, operant conditioning. And third, observational learning. There are also cognitive learning theories we will discuss. Okay. Then coming to our nature-nurture controversies, how can we know whether a characteristic, personality characteristic is genetically determined or it is determined by environment? So relative influence of genes or heredity and environment. How can we know which is determining which trait? Some are obvious. Suppose your eye color, it is determined by genes. But suppose you are very aggressive. Is it genetically determined or it is environmental factors that have made you an aggressive person? So there are,
Ma'am, I think both the factors are important in this.
yes, both the factors are important, but in order to
Hello?
know their relative importance, we have several research methods. Okay. First, whether a person to know the relative importance, which factor is more important, to know it, we have twin studies, we have adoption studies, we have family studies. These are the methods through which we can know the relative importance of genes versus environment. Do you know what is twin study? What is a twin study? Okay, let me explain. We know identical twins are monozygotic twins. They share 100% of their genes. Okay, but fraternal twins, they are not monozygotic twins. They are dizygotic twins. They share only 50% of genes. And we share also 50% of our genes with our siblings, our brothers and sisters. So, in case of monozygotic twins, genetic sharing is 100%. And in case of fraternal twins, it is 50%. So, if genes are responsible for a particular behavior, then if one pair of one member of a monozygotic twin pair has a characteristic, that characteristic must be present in the other person. If one person of a monozygotic twin pair has a characteristic, suppose one member of the pair is very intelligent, then the other member, if it is genetically determined, the other member must be very intelligent. Okay? But it is also argued that since twins are reared in the same family, their environment is also likely to be same. So in that case, adoption studies are there. Adoption studies, twins are reared apart. One member, both the members of the pair are reared differently in different environments. If still there is a correlation between their personality characteristics, then it is definitely genetically determined, because it is here the environment is different. Could you get me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So adoption studies are also there. So adoption studies are children are reared apart from their biological parents. So it is a method of studying the relative importance of heredity and environment. And there are also family studies. We track the family members. Suppose a particular characteristic. Suppose a mental disorder. A person is suffering from a mental disorder. We track the family members and we see how many of the family members also do have the same mental disorder. Okay. Suppose a person is schizophrenic, then we try to find out how many family members are also suffering from schizophrenia. So, if many of the family members are suffering from schizophrenia, then it must have a genetic component. Okay. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then the next issue is in the study of personality is the person situation controversy. I have already mentioned about it. It is a debate started by Michel in 1968. Michel was of the opinion that traits do not predict the actual behavior. Actually, we describe our personality in terms of traits. We will discuss it later, very shortly. Then traits do not predict our actual behavior. Our behavior is different in different situations. Not only in different situations, but also in same situation, but at different times. So here, Michel argued that the personality traits do not predict our behavior. Rather, situations are better predictors of behavior. Only personality trait and actual behavior has a correlation as low as 0.2 to 0.3. 0.3 means 9% of variance in behavior is explained by traits. So, personality is mainly determined by our situation. But in different research, different researchers, they have reported higher correlation between personality traits and actual behavior. So, they argue that personality is a stronger predictor of behavior across all situations, but not a strong predictor of an individual's behavior at a specific time in a specific situation. Try to understand. Across all situations, personality is a stronger predictor. Yes? I am repeating. Personality is a stronger predictor of behavior across all situations, If you are aggressive, then across all situations, it is very likely that you will behave in aggressive manner. But in a specific time and in a specific situation, you may not behave aggressively. Suppose you are aggressive. Always you express your aggression at different times, in different situations. But particularly now, in this situation, you are not expressing your aggression. Are you expressing?
No, ma'am.
So, at a specific time and in a specific situation, you may not behave aggressively. But your trait, aggressiveness, determines your personality across situations. That's why it is called a relatively stable characteristic, personality. Even in recent years, Michel has also changed his opinion. Okay. So, then comes the behavioral consistency controversy.
Ma'am, what the changed opinion of the mission?
Michel has now changed his opinion. He is agreeing to this view. It is not, he is of the opinion that it is not a stronger predictor of what I said. So he has changed his opinion. He is also agreeing to this statement. At a specific time, in a specific situation, he may not behave in a particular manner, but his personality, his overall behavior across the situations is determined by his personality. So, whether personality or our internal relatively stable forces of personality influence behavior, or our traits, whether traits are internal forces or traits are reactions to specific situations. There is also controversy. So, some researchers like Hudson and May, they have conducted a classic study on honesty in children. Okay, children were exposed to situations where they could get a chance to behave dishonestly, and that too without getting detected. They arranged the experimental situation in such a manner that the children, the subjects, could get a chance to cheat, and they were there was no chance of being caught. Okay, the results showed that children were not consistent on either of the ends, honestly or dishonestly, but they behaved specific to the situation. So it is argued the trait honesty, whether it is um, internal to a person, or it is situation specific. Um, Researchers argue that before deciding a person's response to any specific stimuli, the perceptual and cognitive process should be taken into account. when the situation is clear, the person can interpret the situation presented to him. The situational variables are more important. Okay, when suppose when I know that I won't be caught even if I cheat, then situational variables may be important. On the other hand, when the situation is ambiguous, I do not know about the situation, I cannot interpret the situation correctly, then personality variables are more important. Okay. So our behavior, consistency of our behavior depends on our interpretation of the situation. Okay. So there is an interactionist approach to the situation. Our behavior is influenced by both our personality as well as our appraisal of the situation. When the appraisal of the situation, we can appraise the situation clearly. Situation has more influence on behavior. When the situation is ambiguous, our inner qualities, our personality has major influence. So high self monitors try to adapt more to the situation and thus display less consistency across situations in their behavior. So there is individual differences exist whether the person would behave consistently or not. Those who can control their behavior, they are called high self monitors. They try to adapt more to the situation. So their behavior depends more on situation. So there is less consistency. Individuals who show more consistent behavior and their traits do not influence behavior consistently and emerge only in some situations. Okay. Another aspect is that whatever people do, it exhibits their traits. In some situations, whatever they do, it exhibits their traits. Suppose your choice of career, choice of lifestyle, it exhibits your traits. But almost all researchers have demonstrated that traits are predictive of behavior. So personality traits are important. There is another issue, nomothetic approach versus idiographic approach to personality. What is nomothetic approach? Nomothetic approach means it is a tendency to see.
Ma'am, what's the another nomenclature?
Ideography. Ideographic, you may say it. Nomothetic
Thank you,
and ideographic. Okay. Okay. Nomothetic approach is a tendency to see one's personality as constant, hereditary and resistant to change. Here they are of the opinion that the influence of the environment is minimal. Okay. On the other hand, ideographic approach is personality changes. There are unique pattern of traits. We have different traits. The combination of traits is unique to us. So there are no general laws. There are no general laws which can explain our behavior or explain our personality. Alport talks that Alport has a ideographic approach, Alport's theory. So whether nomothetic is there is a general law, it is constant. Personality law is hereditary and it is constant, and it is there is a general law, that is nomothetic approach, and ideographic is there is no general law. Okay. And there are also cross cultural issues. Personality and culture are so much interwoven, or they are dependent on culture. Depends culture determines the personality very much. We all believe in that. But it is also true that the culture of an individual is not the sole determiner of an individual's personality. Sometimes it is said that some traits are absent in some cultures, but maybe it may be that we cannot explain these traits in their culture, in terms of their language. Sorry. So they misinterpret these traits, since they do not have language for these traits. Sometimes we may take an example. Suppose we give a Raven's colored progressive matrices to a tribal child in a remote area. He may not be able to solve these problems. So we may conclude that the child has less intelligence. Okay? But it is not like that. The child has not seen such type of problems. He can very well solve the problems typical of his environment. So how we can say that the child has less intelligent, and there is a cultural differences in terms of cultural difference in terms of intelligence. So sometimes it is not due to cultural differences, but it is due to difficulty in describing individual characteristics and traits in terms of the language of the culture. And another, you must be knowing the 5-factor model. Another example I am 5-factor model. Do you know it? There are big 5 factors: extraversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness, and neuroticism. Cultural differences have been found in.
Ma'am, can you describe a bit about cardinal trait, central trait, and secondary trait?
I will go to it. Alport's theory, I will go to it. Okay. Um, Cultural differences have been found in terms of these 5 factors. When extraversion, agreeableness, and conscientiousness factors almost always appear in all the cultures, but sometimes neuroticism and openness, they are not found across all cultures. So it is not clear whether these factors are not there in the culture itself or are missing from the set of adjectives studied. They do not have language for it. So it is not clear. Okay. So you were asking about Alport. Okay. Cardinal traits. We have several approaches to personality. Before going to trait approach, Alport's theory was a trait theory. Before going to trait approach, let us discuss about type approach. Type approach is the earliest effort to explain personality. This approach describes the personality or describes the individuals in terms of distinct types. These types are all or nothing categories. Individuals, the type theorists, they are of the opinion that the individuals fall into any one of the categories they describe, they talk of.
Ma'am, I can't understand.
Yes.
Can you please repeat this?
Type theorists, they are of the opinion that the individuals can be categorized into different types, different categories, and these types are not overlapping, they are distinct. Okay, so each individual can be placed any one of the types. We can place an individual to any one of the categories. Okay. For example, you know about Hippocrates. You have heard his name, Greek physician. He talked of 4 personality types. These types are based on the dominant body fluid. They are of the opinion that there are 4 basic body fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. The dominance of any one fluid led to a particular personality type. For example, dominance of blood produce sanguine personality. Sanguine personality, these persons are cheerful and active. Thus, from phlegm, there is phlegmatic personality. Such persons are apathetic and sluggish, and the dominance of black bile produce melancholic personality. They are sad and brooding, and dominance of yellow bile produce choleric personality, and choleric persons are irritable. Okay. Another type theory is William Sheldon's. He categorized the persons in terms of body build, and he talks of three categories. Ectomorphic means these persons are thin, long, and fragile. Second category is endomorphic, fat, soft, and round. And mesomorphic are muscular, strong, and rectangular. And according to Sheldon, ectomorphs are artistic, brainy, and introverted. Endomorphs are relaxed, fond of eating, and mesomorphs are dominant, filled with energy and courage. There is another type theory, important type theory, MBTI typology, Myers-Briggs type indicator. MBTI. It is based on Carl Jung's theory of personality types. Carl Jung, talked about introversion and extroversion. There are two attitudes, and there are four types, dimension: extraversion, introversion, sensing or intuition, thinking or feeling, and judgment or perception. Depending on their approach, their thinking style, a person can be sensing or it can be intuitive. Sensing means he can sense things. Likewise, thinking or feeling, these are combinations, and there are all total 16 combinations. And MBTI talks about 16 personality types. But these type approaches are not supported by research. Research doesn't support it. First, there are several criticisms. Psychologists say that there are many people who cannot be fitted into a personality, into the prescribed type. Prescribed personality type. They psychologists rather prefer to describe people in terms of traits. Traits are continuous. So, continuous characteristics. Somebody can have more or less of these traits. Psychologists argue, if we place the individuals into distinct types or categories, where is uniqueness? All the peoples belonging to a particular type are same. So, the uniqueness of personality is lost if we accept the type theories. In contradiction to the type theories, there are trait theories. So, traits are relatively stable and consistent personal characteristics. Okay? Traits are relatively stable and consistent personality characteristics. They are continuous dimensions. Continuous dimensions means we can have traits in various amounts, various degrees, in varying degrees. So, trait theories argue that we have traits. They are talking of about several traits, and we have these traits in varying amounts. And these varying amounts, presence of these traits in varying amounts, varying degrees, make us unique. So trait approach aims at describing people in terms of traits, describing the individuals, as well as measuring individual differences in personality traits. So they are interested in describing the people along various dimensions and measuring the individual differences among people along these dimensions. Okay, there are several important trait theories like Alport, Cattell, Eysenck, Guilford, and Macrae and Costa. So let us discuss about Alport. You were talking about Alport. According to Alport, traits are building blocks of personality. So they are source of individuals. Alport is known as an ideographic trait theorist. He has a strong belief that each person has some unique as well as some common characteristics. And this combination of unique and common characteristics make the person a unique one. So each person has some unique characteristics as well as some common characteristics, and these characteristics together form a unique combination of traits. And for Alport, trait is something that exists within the individual but remains invisible. But it is dynamic. Dynamic means it has motivational properties. It can change the behavior of the individual. It can guide the behavior. So Alport says that trait is something internal, and to him it is located somewhere in the nervous system. Alport believed. Then how can we know
Ma'am, what is located in the
traits? Alport believed. Alport's theory was very old. It is as old as it developed in as early as in 1936. And how did he develop his theory? He collected all the describing words from the English dictionary. From the English dictionary, he collected all the describing words. So describing words means adjectives. Adjectives describe a person, isn't it? So he collected all the
Yes, ma'am.
adjectives, and he prepared a list of nearly 18,000 describing words, adjectives from English dictionary, which describes personal traits. Then he excluded some traits which are not important, which are not important, which are not relevant in describing a person. So then he reduced it. Otherwise, it is very difficult to describe a person in terms of 18,000 traits. So he then reduced the number of these traits, words, and attempted to propose traits like dominance, friendliness, self-esteem, etc. So he had a lexical approach to define personality trait. He collected the words from dictionary, and from the dictionary meaning, he tried to observe whether the person behaves, the person has that trait or not. So, according to him, we can infer about the existence of a trait by observing the consistencies in the behavior of the person. By observing the behavior of the person, we can infer the existence or presence of a trait. Okay.
That was the Alport's, Gordon Alport's approach. Then coming to traits, Alport recognized two major categories of traits: common traits and individual traits. Common traits are those traits which we share in common with many others in our culture. Okay? Common traits are shared among the majority of the members of the cultural group. Okay? For example, we, the Indians, we behave politely to our elders. We show respect to our seniors. We do not argue with our seniors. These are our common traits. Okay. At the same time, there are some individual traits or personal dispositions. These are personal dispositions or individual traits are traits which are unique to the person concerned. So, Alport considered individual traits to be more important than common traits. According to him, there are three types of individual traits. Okay? First,
Excuse me, ma'am.
yes.
Ma'am, I have a small question over here. We were discussing about type theory and trait theory, right? So, all in all, can we come to a conclusion that trait theory discusses about the incognitive part of the human being, that is the intangible part, and the type theory talks about the behavioral, that is the tangible part of a human being?
What do you mean by tangible part?
What I want to know is that trait theory, so far what we have been discussing is trait theory talks only about the incognitive part, things that cannot be seen, like like warmth, be it loneliness. We were talking about all these things, so these things are hidden in internal.
Okay.
So trait theory basically discusses about the internal aspects of a human being.
Okay.
Am I right?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that one.
Okay, but you think that type theories deal with the
External factors, the things that are observable,
since there
actionable
are
factors.
types based on body build,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
But can you see the dominance of a body fluid?
No, ma'am. I just wanted to know, can we come to a conclusion that this can be differentiated in this
No,
way?
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because when we talk of MBTI,
Yes, yes.
there are various combinations of extraversion, sensing, intuition. There are extroverted, intuitive, thinking, and judging personality.
Those are all hidden parts, right?
Those are also hidden parts.
Yes.
So, but this is a type theory.
Okay. So we cannot generalize it in one way.
We cannot generalize it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So, what we were discussing about Alport, I think. Okay, Alport talks three types of traits. First, at the lowest level, three types of individual traits. In fact, at the lowest, they are hierarchically arranged. At the lowest part level are the secondary traits. Secondary traits are traits which are less conspicuous, less consistent, less generalized, and less relevant to the definition of personality. For example, our food habits. It is not very relevant to the definition of a personality. It is less consistent also. There are several secondary traits. They are not very much consistent. They change across the situations. They are not generalized. Just at the next higher level are the central traits. Central traits are, we describe the traits in terms of which we describe a person. Suppose you go to your teacher and for a recommendation letter. You want to apply for a job in some company or in some organization, and you go to your teacher for a letter of recommendation. What the teacher would write about you? So and so is sincere, so hardworking, he is honest, he is friendly, cooperative, or he is self-centered, in like that manner, isn't it? So central traits are 8 to 10 traits which we use to describe a person. Okay, so usually we describe a person in terms of 5 to 10 outstanding traits around which each person's life focuses. We can infer these traits from the person's behavior. And at the highest level are the cardinal traits. Okay, cardinal traits are so pervasive, so dominant, and so outstanding in life that every behavior of that person seems to be influenced by that trait. The person's entire life revolves, we can say, revolves around that trait. That is cardinal trait. For example, compassion. Compassion is a trait, and Mother Teresa has a cardinal trait of compassion. Her entire life is organized around this trait. Or non-violence is a cardinal trait for Mahatma Gandhi. Okay? Do you understand? Now, what are the cardinal traits?
Yes,
Somebody was asking.
ma'am, I was only asking, ma'am, can we say that people with cardinal trait have the qualities of leadership?
If you have such trait, leadership quality, then you can be a leader.
No, ma'am. Ma'am, my question was people with cardinal trait. Do they have? Most of the people you said, like Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, they were all great leaders, and so I mean, do the people with cardinal traits have leadership quality?
But if you define leadership as being an example for other people, then it is you are right.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Definitely, they are examples. They set examples because all of us, do not have cardinal traits. Most of us, majority of us, do not have any cardinal trait. Do you have any
Ma'am,
cardinal trait?
you are saying that only leaders have cardinal trait.
There are also leaders who do not have cardinal traits. They just they are situational leaders. They try to get advantage from the situations. Then we forget them. And whether very few people of us have cardinal trait, but there are many leaders. There are many types of leaders, institutional leaders, political leaders. There are very social leaders. You may say that there are spiritual leaders or social leaders who might have cardinal traits. But suppose an institutional leader, she or he doesn't have might not have any cardinal trait. Okay, there are many types of leaders, and all leaders are not of the same level as Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela. Okay, try to find
Okay, ma'am.
out.
Then
Thank you,
on
ma'am.
what basis can we classify cardinal traits? Like, on what basis can we observe a person that this person is having cardinal trait or something like that?
His or her entire life, all behavior reflects entire life reflects that trait. Try to find out whether Donald Trump has any cardinal trait or not. Try to think.
Well,
So,
from
by
uh, we
observing,
talk about Donald Trump, then he's ambitious, he has power, and these are some points in which we can say that he has cardinal traits, but not all his qualities have cardinal traits.
say that is if all his behavior reflects these traits, then it is cardinal trait. It is.
Yes, ma'am, I got you. Thank you, ma'am.
It is cardinal traits are pervasive. His entire life revolves or entire life centers. Cardinal trait is the center of his entire life. It is organized around the cardinal trait. You are saying that Donald Trump's love for power he has a, yes, he has a love for power. But do you think his entire life revolves about that?
No, his entire life does not revolves around that need, but at the present moment, from the time we have been observing him, maybe for past 2 3 years, I mean, he has this that love for power. He has that cardinal trait.
So anybody in power loves power.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It is not his cardinal trait. I don't think so. I may be wrong.
Yes, ma'am. I also can be wrong.
Okay, even if I were in his place, I would have developed a love for power. Who does
Yes.
not love power? So, majority of us do not have any cardinal trait. Actually, we behave according to the demands of situation. We are not, our behavior is not so much consistent. What Gandhi told, let me die, I may die, but do not behave violently. I won't be violent. Okay. So, according to Alport, these are three different types of individual traits, and all these traits are dynamic. They possess motivational power. These individual traits or dispositions can motivate a person. Those traits or dispositions which are more motivational, they are experienced intensely. Okay. And those traits which are less intensively experienced, they are less motivational. So we may say that cardinal traits are more motivational. Intrinsically, they are more motivational. Okay? Whether motivational or stylistic or whatever you may say it, some individual traits are close to the core of the person's personality, whereas some are at the periphery. Usually, secondary traits are at the periphery and central traits are to the close to the core of the person's personality. And definitely, as I have already said, cardinal traits are the center of the person's personality, are at the center of the person's personality. So these traits form the structure of a personality, and in turn, personality determines the behavior of an individual. So traits determine the behavior of the individual. And these traits, according to Alport, are not unrelated. They are integrated. So personality is an integrated whole. These traits are not disorganized. The person integrates the traits, different traits, as a whole into a unity, which Alport says this integration as the proprium or self. So our self is the integrated traits, or the self integrates or embodies the traits. Okay, clear?
Yes, ma'am, got you.
Okay, thank you. There is another trait theorist, Raymond Cattell. He considered personality to be a pattern of traits, providing the key to understanding it. According to him, according to Cattell, traits are relatively permanent and broad reaction tendencies of personality. Okay, broad reactions of personality. Cattell talked of Cattell explained personality as the building Cattell explained traits as the building blocks of personality. He described traits as the building blocks of personality. So personality is composed of traits. He distinguished between the traits along three dimensions. First, surface trait and source trait. According to Cattell, there are some traits are surface traits and some traits are source traits. The observable qualities of a personality, which we can observe from his behavior, are called surface traits. Suppose a person likes to be with people. He is more sociable. He is more outgoing. We can observe these behavior traits from his behavior, whether the person is outgoing or not, whether the person likes the social gatherings or the presence of other people or not. We can observe it from his external behavior. So these are surface traits. Using but surface traits, some of the surface traits Cattell observed appear together from time to time. If we calculate the correlation between these behaviors, we can find a positive correlation. Suppose somebody who likes to be with other people also is outgoing. That means these traits go hand in hand. So he proposed that there is some deeper underlying factor which is responsible for these surface behaviors. Some underlying factors are guiding the person to behave in such manners. So the underlying factors, the deeper level factors which are responsible for these source traits are called, these surface traits are called source traits. So source traits are deeper and more general underlying personality factors. Okay, they are responsible for surface traits. Surface traits, we can observe them using questionnaires or observe them from their outward behavior. But at the deeper level, there are.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Hmm?
Ma'am,
Yes.
some surface trait appears together with what?
Together with each other. Together with each other. For example, I gave a person likes the presence of other people. He wants to be with other people. He is outgoing. So all these behaviors, they appear together in a person who likes the presence of other people, must be sociable.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So he must be outgoing. He must be seeking the presence of other people. So he must be outgoing. He must be approaching to other people. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So hmm, these surface traits go hand in hand. Okay. So why do they go hand in hand? So Cattell hypothesized that there must be some deeper or underlying personality factors which are responsible for this outward behavior. So these underlying personality factors are called as source traits. So source traits make up the most basic structure of personality and are underlying factors that are responsible for the intercorrelation among surface traits. Okay. Cattell found out 23 source traits in normal persons. 23. But he studied 16 of them in detail. And he developed a questionnaire called 16 personality factor questionnaire. So 16 personality factor questionnaire, which is a 16 PF test, we call it, 16, developed by Raymond Cattell. 16 PF personality questionnaire measures the personality of the individual along 16 source traits. Okay, understood? Later, he
Yes, ma'am.
felt that these 16 personality source traits cannot describe uh, the characteristics of the psychotics, of the abnormal people, deviant behavior. Okay, so he felt that 16 personalities, the number is inadequate to describe the characteristics of the psychotics. So he again derived, he analyzed the surface behavior of the normal and abnormal persons, and he derived 12 new factors that measure psychopathological traits. So in total, there are 16 normal personality factors, source traits, and 12 new psychopathological traits. So he combined these 12 psychopathological traits plus earlier 16 personality factors and combined them and developed the clinical analysis questionnaire. Okay, clinical analysis questionnaire. Cattell believes that the clinical analysis questionnaire is adequate to measure source traits of both normal and abnormal personality. Then he also categorized the traits along the dimension of constitutional versus environmental. Cattell distinguished, or Cattell is of the opinion that some traits are constitutional traits and some traits are environmentally molded traits. Constitutional traits are those traits which are determined by nature or biology. Okay, whereas environmentally molded traits are determined by nurture or our by experiences or interaction with the environment. Most surface traits reflect a mixture of both heredity and environment. However, some are solely biological or constitutional, and some are solely derived from environmental factors. To distinguish them, Cattell used a very complicated statistical technique, and statistically he could distinguish between constitutional traits and environmental traits. Then another distinction by Cattell is he subdivides his traits into ability traits, temperament traits, and dynamic traits. Ability traits refer to the person's skill in dealing with the environment. Okay. Example is intelligence. Temperament traits show how a person moves towards a goal, being moody, irritable, easygoing, are examples of temperament traits. And dynamic traits are the person's motivation, interest, which set the person in action towards the goal. They are a person may be characterized as being power seeking or ambitious. It is his dynamic trait. It motivates his behavior and guides the behavior of the individual towards the goal. According to Cattell, there are 3 types of dynamic traits. First, attitude, second, urges, and third, sentiments. Attitudes display specific manifestation of underlying motives. Urges are constitutional, and sentiments focus on social objects, and it is environmentally molded dynamic source trait. Dynamic source trait. Okay. So some traits are he distinguished traits in terms of first surface trait and source trait. Secondly, the traits can be grouped as constitutional and environmental. Thirdly, the traits can be grouped as ability traits, temperament traits, and dynamic traits. And lastly, dynamic traits can be attitudes, urges, and sentiments. Attitudes are specific manifestation of underlying motives. They are dynamic surface traits, obviously, and they are specific manifestation of underlying motive. Urges are constitutional, and sentiments are environmental. Dynamic source trait. And we have Eysenck's type trait hierarchy.
Eysenck, a British psychologist, Hans Eysenck. Eysenck believed that personality is largely determined by genes and environmental factors have very little role to play in it. So he opined that personality is more or less stable and enduring organization of a person's character, temperament, intellect, and physique. In his definition, he emphasizes upon traits which are clustered together and constitute a type. So, Eysenck organizes his traits. Which traits correlate with each other form a type. Okay? So, according to Eysenck, some traits are correlated with each other and they can be considered as a type. So, he has a type trait hierarchy. As the higher level is the type, then trait, and how can we know about the traits of the person? From his habits. So at the lowest level of the Eysenck's hierarchy are the single responses like action or thoughts, which he called habits. So regularly occurring responses form habits. Okay, which responses regularly we show are our habits. The behaviors we show regularly are called habits. Related habits form traits, and related traits clustered together to constitute a type. Understood? So, types are more abstract, followed by traits, and habits are at the beginning level. Habitual responses are specific observable responses. Sorry. We can understand it through an example. Suppose extraversion. Extraversion is based upon observed intercorrelation among the traits like sociability, liveliness, excitability, etc. Okay, and each of these traits is inferred from intercorrelations among habitual responses. Habitual responses, what are they? For example, a person whether a person is sociable or not. We can infer about this trait, sociability trait. We can observe his habitual responses, such as going to club, liking to talk with people, taking part in any social activity. These are observable habits, observable habitual responses. We can observe these responses of the individual, and these observable responses are correlated and they form the trait of sociability. Okay. Likewise, there is liveliness, activity, different traits, and all these traits are correlated and form the type extraversion. So,
Eysenck based his research and based upon factor analysis, factor analytic research, he found out that there are two major dimensions of personality. What are they? Extraversion and neuroticism. Extraversion is, the person is oriented towards external reality. The opposite direction, the person is introvert, and they are introspective persons who are more oriented towards inner reality. Okay, so extraversion is a dimension or personality type of Eysenck, and the second one is neurotics. Neurotics are emotionally unstable persons. They are characterized by a disproportionate anxiety level, the very high anxiety level, which is disproportionate to the realities of the situation. Some neurotics show anger, some neurotics show obsessive and impulsive symptoms. Some may show unreasonable fear of objects or persons, etc. So, neurotics are emotionally imbalanced, emotionally unstable persons. And it is a dimension of personality. So the person may be extraversion type or introversion type, and the person may be neurotic or emotionally balanced type. However, Eysenck observed there are neurotics who are free from burden of anxiety and fear, but they cannot be said as emotionally balanced. For example, psychopaths. They do not feel any anxiety or fear, but they are also not emotionally balanced. They are not normal. So, Eysenck added another dimension, that is psychoticism. Psychoticism is characterized by traits such as being insensitive to others, hostile, cruel, and inhuman. So, in total, there are three dimensions of personality according to Eysenck. And Eysenck thought that these traits are biologically determined. So he gave inhibition theory or arousal theory. For example, he explained that the reticular activating system, which is responsible for our arousal level, reticular activating system is responsible for our arousal, attention, etc. It is very highly what we say, arousal level is very high in introverts. Okay, and the arousal level of the extroverts is very low. You may be confused. Okay, but try to understand. The arousal level of introverts is very high. So internally they are very highly aroused. So our body always tries to maintain an optimum level of arousal. So when we feel very high level of arousal, we are tired, we are uncomfortable, and when we are not, we are at a very low level of arousal than the optimum level required by the body, we feel bored, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.